again. Welcome to an episode of Fandom Jockies. Yeah, I'm by myself again. Though lonely. I had to think about my life a little bit. You know. But it's whatever. Nah. So, the theme of today's podcast is DC's It's Just a Phase. We'll be discussing a few subjects that'll be in this one. One, we'll be talking about some of the Suicide Squad early reviews that have been coming out. We'll also be talking about the Killing Joke, or more specifically, I'll be giving a review of that. Also, Justice League movies. I'm going to have a response to what it is, and also possibly a prediction for how it'll go. Also, an overview of Justice League Action, the new Cartoon Network show that'll be coming out at some point, and Injustice 2. So pretty much everything just under the whole entire DC phase that's happening. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I guess we'll kick things off with some Suicide Squad. So for anyone who is in the know, or I guess I should say anyone who's been reading anything in the news lately, it seems that Suicide Squad had some early negative reviews, which has definitely put a lot of people on edge. And this can be a good or bad thing, I guess. One way, I guess you're probably asking, well, how is this a good thing? Well, in a way that this can be good for it to be getting some early bad reviews is that at least we kind of get an idea of where DC is heading, or necessarily DC's learning more about how to learn what not to do, I should say. Although it is very disconcerting if the movie was doing poorly, but obviously the bad news is, well, it's pretty darn obvious, actually, because it's not doing well. But I guess there is a bit of a silver lining. It seems that the reviews are kind of 50-50. Some of the reviews are insisting that it's not great, but also not necessarily bad. Like, there are some shining elements of the entire film that's worth noting. Most notably would be, like, some of the characters that are involved in the story. They've been saying that, of course, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is obviously pretty darn good, and also some pretty good remarks on Will Smith's Deadeye, I believe. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna have to remember the character's name afterwards, because like I already used to know it, and then it's just kind of gone, which is kind of sad. But nonetheless, like it seems like some of the characters are pretty good, and it seems the real thing that seems to hamper it is there's apparently a horrible villain. And the fact that there's some lines that are kind of cheesy, and then other moments just feel a little bit by the numbers. Which, if you've seen anything of the commercials or any of the advertising, it seems like they're doing everything they can to make sure it seems like it's something that's not by the numbers. Because, you know, they didn't just want, like, everyone was thinking, like, it's just not gonna be another, why we are the heroes, and there's the villain. I shall slay you, villain. Oh no, hero, I shall put obstacles in your way, and you shan't defeat me. Oh no, you defeated the obstacle. Don't worry, that's just the first one. Yeah, sure, it's just the first one. It seemed like you had, just that one. Nope, I got 15 more. Here they are. Throw them in oddly separate groups at a time to let you defeat them easily, so you can kind of adjust. And I'm not quite good at this. No, you're not. Are we gonna fight? Sure, whatever. Here's my scheme if you want to listen to it. Of course, it's only the standard to, listen to your entire plan, get an idea of what you're gonna do, yeah, I got it. So, first here's X, Y, and Z, and you see how long that kind of entire joke goes out for? That's a kind of atypical movie. It gets tedious. It gets tedious, and it gets boring, and you're like, why am I watching this? So, unfortunately, that seems to be the direction that the movie kind of headed in, despite having some otherwise very intriguing moments. And it kind of saddens me because, like, everything about this movie seemed like it could have gone anywhere else but there. For example, like, there was the animated Suicide Squad, where it's like, that was a really fun movie to go around with. There were some different characters that were involved. Some of the similar ones, you still had, like, Harley Quinn, not still had Dead you still had Killer Croc. Still had Captain Boomerang. But some of the things that were shifted out, like you had, it wasn't Killer Croc, it was The shark dude whose name isn't coming to mind at the moment. I know, you're gonna hate me for not knowing the character's name, but it was the shark dude instead of Killer Brock. I think it was Lockjaw? I believe it was that. It also had Killer Frost, and it was actually quite entertaining going along with the entire film, because like you got a little moment to see everyone who's in there. There was another character whose name I also just don't remember, so right now you can just say, "Ha ha, you're not a real nerd." Or like, "Yeah, I am, don't bully me like a nerd." The irony and blah blah blah. But anywho, it was a pretty fun ride, and they didn't really need to have an antagonist because again, you already had antagonists go in a mission. I mean, if anything, it was the person who put them in the position that was the actual antagonist, and that itself was rather a bit more interesting. When you see like the villains who are actually going to be the heroes this time around, and somehow they don't have anyone that they're specifically working against, but rather it's just the situation that they're in and seeing how they actually escape it. It was like an entire, like escape caper or something like that. You know the word I'm referring to. But, yeah, so the actual enemy was, I guess antagonist at best, was Amanda Waller, since she was the one who put them in a position and always threatened them that, yeah, your head's gonna blow up if you don't do what I say. And, like, that alone is enough motivation, and the entire time they're just trying to escape their scenario. But, like, yeah, that was effectively the antagonist of the film, and Batman was the other one who came in. I guess in some way Joker was an antagonist, but realistically to me it just seemed like he was doing more to add to the entire chaos of the entire scene. But yeah, so nonetheless, we're gonna kind of see how this turns out, because at the moment it seems that there's a major schism between the critics and the fans, and just like any early review of just about any comic movie, the fans are all behind the movie and basically trying to bolster it to make sure people know that, yeah, this movie's great, I don't care what anyone says. But due to some of the most recent DC turnouts, it seems that fans have become a lot more hostile, and the unfortunate thing is that for some reason they have been holding Rotten Tomatoes accountable for this, as if Rotten Tomatoes is the singular person who's trying to cause a problem with the movie. Like, yeah, we're aiming for you. And the reason why it's so... yeah, it's actually kind of hilarious how it's going, because they actually decided to get like a petition signed to try and get Rotten Tomatoes website taken down, because they felt that it was a specific person doing this, despite not realizing that Rotten Tomatoes is actually a site that coalesces all the reviews of different people together, and then basically puts a general number, and basically you can see like what the waters are generally saying about the movie. So it's not like a single person, it's everyone's opinion, and it's kind of like when you reach the point to where it's like you guys are now basically angry at one person for representing the general collective of what they're saying. That's basically like telling the world, "Fuck you! You don't get to tell me whether it's good or not. I'm gonna tell you if it's good or not. Yeah, who is it for you to decide whether this movie's good or not? Let the people speak. Now let me shut up the people." Oh, I see. I'm doing the bad thing. So, at some point, the person who ever put the petition up, they realized that, yeah, it's kind of dumb, because they realized that Rotten Tomatoes isn't trying to attack DC or Warner Brothers, especially since Warner Brothers actually owns Rotten Tomatoes, so, like, why would they self-sabotage? So, nonetheless, that was just kind of a interesting thing to go through. It was personally just kind of funny to me, but I'll admit, I was kind of having a lot of hope that this movie would do well, because like it did a lot of interesting things. Like the trailers were really good, the entire like artistic style behind it was really fun, active, vivid, and it's like you had all the ways to basically kind of just go in an unorthodox method, especially considering like you have examples, like you have the comic and you even have the animated film, which basically was a really fun thing to watch. Again, I'd really say just go ahead and watch that before this film if need be. Like, not as a compare and contrast, but just seeing, like, the different routes this movie could have taken. I have yet to see the movie, so I'm going to go and see that and basically take a look at it. And I hope that it basically does me well, but I would be afraid if it isn't at least somewhat entertaining. because I want to see the silver lining, and like I want to see this do better, and yeah, it kind of leaves me a little bit underwhelmed otherwise. Also, apparently, what happened is that the reason why the movie didn't do so well is, or apparently what happened in the movie, that there's some parts of it where it was like there were notable cuts, and we all know that there were a lot of cuts to the movie previously. Like we had all the news about that, but apparently it's a director's cut that's a tad different from what's actually presented. And honestly, I'm kind of more interested to see what the director's cut is than what the final product is, because it seems every single time they decide to do cuts like this, something bad happens. And if you recall earlier, I was basically defending that final cuts doesn't mean it's a bad thing. In fact, it's basically just a prediction of it. And even that, I don't even really say it was really I'd really say maybe even those cuts weren't necessarily what ruined it. If anything, I'd say it was probably just Batman v Superman that really basically put this movie in the hot seat. And it's unfortunate because like it didn't have to be that. It could have just been the fun movie it was, which didn't need to be criticized by any other DC kind of expectation, like any other expectation that it has to be good. And because of this expectation, you are going to be heavily criticized by anything else. Because like this movie really could have just been a fun ride of its own. And it's like I'm hoping that maybe when it comes out, or at least when more people see it, the reviews might change a bit, or they might see like something else that was a little bit out there or something different. Because I mean, again, the critics of it, like there are every single critic there, they're saying like they still enjoyed it. It's just there were this notable issue with it, and like I would like for the movie to do at least a more appropriate rating. Because I mean, the new Ghostbusters got another rating just because some people were, I guess, being heavily criticized for criticizing it. But I guess to kind of move to the final question of this, I guess who should we look to as the guiding point of DC movies? Now, the reason I ask this is because at some point you start realizing that there are some critics who are really having the movie's best intentions in mind, and then some other critiques who basically do the movie just generally they just kind of go in neutral and then basically criticize, and there's some who kind of have it out for the movie. And then you also happen to have the fan base, which a lot of them are basically more forgiving of something despite anything, and then you also have a lot of the fan base who are more critical just for any reason. Then you have some of the fan base who are just generally moviegoers. So, I mean, this is generally kind of how you kind of have to look at things, which is why Rotten Tomatoes always has the critic pool score, and then they have the general public pool score. And in all honesty, I've always, depending on what kind of movie it is, I've always kind of like either kind of did like a average of the two, like take both and see what the average is. And then sometimes I might look at the critic score a little bit more significantly. Like some movies that are actually pretty decent but aren't as popular, they tend to get a pretty decent score. And then you have movies that are really popular that get the fan score but get a little critic score. So I guess in some way I kind of gave my own answer, is that it depends on what kind of movie it is that I'd say you should probably look to see where it is. And I guess for DC movies at the moment, it's kind of hard to say because we seem to have a significant war going on between the two. So in the meantime, for Suicide Squad, I'm gonna say maybe take an average of the two and see how things go. So for the next subject, I'm gonna move to The Killing Joke. So this movie has been something that's been really heavily anticipated by the fan base, and a lot of people were excited for this coming out. And like the theaters where it's going to be premiering for the one night, everyone was just clamoring to go see it. So I went to go see the movie, and overall I liked it, but I can't say that there isn't a notable issue. So poor Barbara. Unfortunately, Barbara is actually the center of the problem here, and it's a little bit unfortunate that she is, because otherwise she's like, it's basically like kind of throw an entire wrench into an otherwise unnecessary problem. But Barbara in this it's really more like towards the first half. In the film, there are basically like two different sections that are worth noting. So in the first half of the movie, it feels like it's its own thing as opposed to actually being a single entity. I guess to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that. in the first half of the movie, they decided to kind of, oh, I should also say spoiler territory, so yeah, spoilers. In the first half of the movie, they decided to try and find a means to give Barbara Gordon a little bit more significance to the film, since apparently, in the film, or in the story, she didn't really have as much of a significant use, simply because it was more of a Batman and Joker and Gordon story than it was her. And so the film decided, well, we kind of have to pad out a little bit more for time, since the comic itself isn't that long. And we also want to give Barbara Gordon a bit more use. So what ended up happening is they created this romance, or at least some kind of sexual tension between Barbara and Batman. Or more specifically, it was sexual tension as represented from Barbara's side towards Batman, who seemed to be from the more neutral side. So I guess there's some positive and some negative aspects that they did with this. The good thing is that they kind of showed what Batman is like from her perspective, which basically gives another vision of Batman, and you also kind of see a point of Batman, like where he later mentions a breaking point, or the void as he calls it, and you can kind of, it's like a precursor to him reaching the point where you see her reach that point. And in this section, she kind of has her own villain that she has to deal with. It's some mob boss or at least a mob boss's cousin, who is actually pretty good at what he does, and he's actually rather competent. And for anyone who didn't see The Killing Joke, or read The Killing Joke, the comic, you might almost be thrown for a loop thinking that, oh, is this the Joker, some cocky kid who's really good? And, like, no, it's not, but, like, this kid is actually, like, cocky, he's, I want to say headstrong, but I can't even say that, because he's usually just very in control of the moment, and makes very good, decisive decisions. And eventually he becomes the antagonist to her, that she eventually realizes that she kind of has to realize that this is her void, and this is the level to which being in Batman, you basically have to face and realize you're going to come to the point, and you have to make sure you don't kill. And this is her test, and the only odd thing about it is that there's a lot of sexuality within this first part. Like, there's him basically kind of flirting with her, and then her not liking him, but unknowingly become more obsessed with him, and then Batman saying, like, hey, don't become obsessed with him. Like, he wants to get you hot and bothered, and whether you realize it or not, that's gonna coalesce into something later on. I'm just telling you that, Batgirl. And she's like, nah, I got it, Batman. Shut up, Batman, I can do this. And it's like every step of the way, she just keeps falling into the mobster's trap. And it's kind of funny, because it's like, it kind of brings out the old hot-tempered female character again, like how in some stories, they decide to basically make it where men are apparently the logical one and women are the overtly emotional ones, which basically makes them, like, apparently unstable, or they can't really handle real situations, or all the more reasons why they can't be the leaders and blah 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 blah. I mean, like, if you don't believe me, like, trust me, just go back and see some older, like, movies, or even really just older stories, either a comic, a book, cartoon, movie, whatever. Like, you'll see how they'd like to represent it. And it kind of really, I don't know, like, it almost puts like a significant chip on her shoulder, because it's like, while Barbara Gordon isn't exactly like the greatest character of all time, but like, there's a lot of big families behind her, and she has a lot of things that she's done well. Plus, like, she's like, what, the only real female Bat character, and you expect like her to be a bit more of control than this. And it seems like it's kind of a dumb way for her to kind of get punked, I guess. I mean, how, like, here I am just stumbling with my words. It's, in that regard, it's kind of frustrating, because I expected more of her character, and then at some point, she and Batman end up having a scene where the entire tension builds over, and like, Batman saying, "You're off the case, Barbara," and she's like, "No, I'm not. I'm gonna do this one way or another," and then they fuck. Like, and like, it's not even like in the Batcave or anything. Like, no, it's just on top of a random building. Which, I mean, like, if people talk about rug burn, then I can't even imagine what's like being on top of like a cement ceiling, and they just fuck. And for some people, like, they believe that there's always been tension between Barbara Gordon and Bruce Wayne or Batman. So they were like, yeah, I can see that. But then for other people, it feels like it's an odd emotional scene. Like, not that Batman is sexing up with someone, because I mean, like, he's kind of notorious for sexing up with some peeps, but it's the fact that Batman always kind of had kind of like a father, or at least another paternal like relationship, like, or at least an uncle, something that they was always out of that range. Like, I could definitely see why Barbara Gordon might have some kind of admiration or even sexual frustration for him, but vice versa, Batman always felt like the character who seemed like he wouldn't be above that. Like, the fact that she was his sidekick, so there should be kind of a guardian-like relationship, or like a viewpoint that would basically just tell him, no, I can't do that. Like, you're a beautiful girl, and trust me, you're attractive. Like, I'm not gonna say I haven't looked from time to time. Cough, cough, don't tell Gordon. But no, I can't. Like, it would ruin the relationship between the two of us, and it's like, I promise you, in this kind of field, like, because we start off as you being my sidekick and me being your superior, it'll be weird. Like, if you became your own independent thing and we came up later, then sure, who cares? I don't mind. But, yeah. And essentially, this is probably the reason why some people use the argument in, like, Batman Beyond series, how Barbara Gordon and Batman had a fling. Yeah, in Batman Beyond, they had a fling. But, like, the main difference is when did it happen, and it wasn't as focused on it, and you saw how they separated later on, and blah, 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 blah. Point being, it just seemed like an odd thing to really focus on. I mean, even if there were parallels, it was notable that it was a separate part of the film, like it was the add-on. And to some degrees, like, while I do want to see more DC things actually put in theaters, DC animated things put in theaters, this one felt a bit short. And if it was going to be short, like, I would have preferred it just to be a short feature as opposed to trying to pad out time with this portion of time. But I guess kind of getting off of her, I guess getting to the second half where I think things were a little bit more significant. So after going through the film, you happen to kind of follow the story as it went, and it was very entertaining at that point. Like, it showed a lot of appeal, and you saw like the voice acting for all the characters. Like, dear God, does it do so well. Like, even with my issues with the first half, like the animation and the voice acting, it made up for a lot of it. And basically, even with that minor wrench in the problem, which I need to stop using that expression because I'm using incorrectly, and you're like, wrench in the problem, I don't really see how that works, but whatever. It was honestly just well done to the point I could still like it despite that, and honestly, I wouldn't really criticize it too heavily because of that moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a significant aspect of it, but still, even just certain moments where you just see the Joker in there, like, dear God, Mark Hamill just steals the scene. And it's pretty much any moment that he's in, it's just amazing just seeing Mark Hamill be the Joker, and it's probably why, for a lot of people, he probably will stand as the best Joker, because it's an unmistakable voice. It is an unfading Joker. I mean, like, even in his age, he could technically bring the character back, and it always comes back just fitting on like a glove, and it's just, you just fall in love with the character all over again. And of course, even the voice actor for Batman, again, him coming back, like, he just reminds you like how sincere yet reserved the Batman character is, and like that, it helps a lot when you see all these great voice actors coming back, and like you see how much they can basically save a movie or even save anything just because of how well they fit in there and how well they basically represent the character, how well they portray the character. Yeah, because I mean, like, Kevin Conroy as Batman is just so freaking amazing. And Tara Strong as Barbara, like, again, even if I did have that one issue, like, I still liked Barbara overall, because, like, Tara Strong is, like, her voice acting career has always been a strong one, and she always adds so much personality to a character, where it's, like, even with its faults, it's still a great ride. Now, I will say probably the one thing I would actually say is probably something I should probably call is that the movie didn't have to be rated R. I say this because, like, the comic probably could have done well, but in here, like, the movie, it seems like they had a golden chance to actually push it to being a rated R necessity, but it always felt like it was undermined. I say this because, like, there are certain shots where, like, the only thing I could really say that actually warranted a rated R was one person yelling out, "fuck!" and 2 people getting shot in the head.
So those are the three things, the three moments in the movie that actually warranted rated R. But when you think about it, all you really had to do to basically shift it to just PG-13 is just edit out the shots where it basically it's just implied they were shot in the head. Because it's not even like it was like a bullet like blasted out the back of their heads. No, it was just a blood spot. Like just ketchup just sprays and like, oh, they're dead. And when that's about it, you realize that you just edit out a line and just change the angle from where they're shot and bada, you got a PG-13 movie. So the movie was good overall, it just didn't need to be rated R. But aside from that, I mean, like, they still have the great moments, like when you see Joker starting off as who he was previously. It's like they really make this sympathetic character. He seems pathetic. He seems just so inexorably un-Joker when you see him. And it's like, it's the perfect reason why, like, at the moment, The Killing Joke has a 6.8 on IMDb and a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the reason why is that the main issue is just that first half it felt so unnecessary. Because, like, everyone, like, aside from that, like, you think about it, 53 and 57%, despite this big issue that people have, it's still riding at 50, and it's like, if you just didn't do that, you would have been fine. Like, it's still a fun, like, I still like it, and I still think people can enjoy it, but it's like, this one thing, if you just didn't do that, you could have done better with this. And at that point, like, the movie, like I said, like, I would have preferred to just be a shorter interval if they just couldn't figure out how to pad out for time. But in all honesty, like, if I had to figure out how I probably would have altered it to where they could still have everything they wanted without having to add on the fake stories, just, if they really wanted to make Barbara feel more humane, then I would have suggested maybe make up some of your own scenes between Barbara Gordon and Commissioner Gordon. Like, these two together, like, will basically add a little bit more significance to the relationship, because there's a point in the movie or the comic where it turns out that the Joker's plot is basically to prove that all it takes is one bad day for someone to go insane, and he basically decides to basically put Gordon through the worst thing that could happen to him, or at least quote-unquote worst thing could happen to him, where basically his daughter is shot, crippled, and then stripped naked, and he has to go through an entire ride of just seeing his daughter shot, bleeding out, and naked, and him basically being tortured by midgets. I think I shouldn't say that, but it's like, they're so inhuman looking towards, like, I don't think I could really dignify them with, like, by saying dwarf, because I mean, like, or even say little person, because, like, no, these little guys look like monsters, like, I'm sorry, like, they do. And, like, and there's no humanity represented in these characters, so I feel like I can get away with saying midget this time. If not, I'm sorry, but come on. Look, like, just Google it, look at those little monsters, and, like, those little guys are like, no, you made sure that no one's gonna have any sympathy for these things. I'm sorry, but they're things at this point. Like, just, God. But either way, like, I would have focused more on the relationship between Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon, as opposed to the relationship between her and Batman. Because, like, while Batman is definitely pained by what happened to him, it doesn't particularly matter to him, because he's not the one who has to go through the breaking point. It's him and Gordon. And, like, I think Batman would have felt bad enough just by knowing what happened. Like, if need be, you could have just done some short flashbacks of him and Barbara to basically kind of give him some interest as to why he felt so pained when something bad happened to her. And that would have been fine. Like, he didn't really have to go through the whole entire, she has her own story, because, no offense, even with that, you realize that in The Killing Joke, she's not a significant character. Three core characters would be Batman, Joker, and Gordon, and you kind of realize that upon watching. Like, you don't really need to try and give her own arc, because it's already understood what she's going through. It's already understood that whatever's happening to her is basically more reflected on everyone else. And Gordon really should have been more focused on. Like, I can't help but say, but yeah, he should have been, because of everyone, he was the one who was basically the one who's going through the gauntlet, and he's the one who has to basically represent the figure that can stand true despite what happened to him. And basically, like, there are three parallels that are going on. There's him and Batman and Gordon. Essentially, Gordon being the person who can survive the bad day, Joker being the one who basically had all the worst things that could happen to him. Basically, him not being able to make it as a comedian, being destitute, him having an oncoming baby that's coming around and he has to prepare for it, then his wife and child dying, and then him basically being turned into the Joker, like, that all coalesces into a single moment where you realize he just finally snaps, and you want to see the parallels, and you want to see how Batman is more connected to the Joker, where he doesn't want the inevitable end for the two of them to occur, where eventually one of them's gonna have to die for the relationship to finally reach its crescendo. And like I would have liked to focus if they had put a little more time on those moments, like even if they had to kind of add their own dialogue to things like that, it would have worked better, because it seems like you're understanding the heart of the comic a little bit more than deciding, Barbara! People want to see Barbara! Oh, Barbara! You'll do well, I promise. We have you, Barbara. Barbara! I don't know, like, again, like, I enjoy Tara Strong coming back as a character, but it felt really unnecessary to basically put so much focus on her when you could have... In fact, you could have just used her to enhance other aspects of the comic. But, aside from that, overall, I still enjoyed it, and I'd still suggest people go see it, wherever they can find it. But, again, I just kind of had to focus on the main thing I said previously. I really wish they focused more on the relationship between Gordon, Batman, and the Joker. Because, I mean, if you know anything about the comic, like, probably the most significant thing that people know about is the ending where Batman, after fighting through Joker's entire force of carnies, he finally reaches Joker, they get into a squabble, and finally he approaches Joker and says, just tells Joker, like, I don't want to hurt you, or Joker's just, like, saying, fine, you got me, just beat me up and put me back in prison again so we can beat the cycle. And Batman's just saying, like, I don't want to do this, like, I want us to be able to break this cycle, because, like, I want to help you. Like, despite all the horrible things you've done, like, I realize somewhere in there is a broken person who honestly feels like he has no other choice, and, like, I want to offer you the choice to be able to do something better, because, like, I want better for you, because, like, considering how intimate this relationship you've made between me and trying to hurt me and trying to call out to me, it's like, clearly you want someone to be there for you, to help you, because clearly you had something horrible happen to you, and, like, I want to kind of relate to you. And Joker responds like, well, I'm sorry, it's too late for me. It's like, I know that you clearly had a breaking point, because, like, let's be honest, you being the Batman, you're insane too, because, like, what kind of person decides to dress up as a giant bat, goes out, punches people, instead of doing anything else? I mean, realistically speaking, it's a pretty good criticism, because, like, you're a billionaire, just help the police get better, find some people and start them in the right place. Like, you know how much money can actually do to help people? I mean, don't get me wrong, you punching people is definitely help, but it's like, you could actually just go through and actually improve some of the corrupt cops, find a way to actually outsource, or basically, like, bring in some better police officers, give them better equipment, go, like, even improve, like, the freaking asylum, give them better staff, and find some people who are willing to actually break them of their habits and actually talk with them one-on-one, or find ways to actually deal with some of the problems. I mean, no offense, but, like, if you're not gonna rehabilitate them, then yeah, you're just gonna have to kill them, because at some point, you have to realize that they're killing way too many people. But anywho, back to that emotional scene, ha 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 ha. Joker and Batman basically have a real bonding moment, or like a real moment of clarity, where they realize that their relationship is never gonna end in a positive fashion. Their relationship is, Joker can't be undone. He realizes that after that moment that he broke, he became a new person, and if there ever was a moment for him to return, it was basically before all the other things he's done. And it realizes that he is, because of all the crimes he's done, because of all the kind of way he now thinks, he has cemented this new personality, this new persona, this new psyche. And to undo something like that is, at this point, impossible, because even if you were to give him a moment of clarity, or basically find a moment to where he can become sane again, the overwhelming guilt of all the things he's done and realizing where else can I go will eventually just consume him again. And yeah, like, quite frankly, you realize that is kind of his only option. So he then comes up with a joke telling him that there were these two insane guys who escape an asylum, and apparently they find an entire pathway of buildings that lead to freedom. They just have to jump from roof to roof. So the first guy makes it, no problem, but the second guy, he basically says, I can't make this jump, you'll have to go on without me. And the first guy returns back and sees that he has a flashlight, and tells the second guy, no wait, if I turn the flashlight and basically shine it across, you can walk across the beam. And the second guy replies, are you crazy, you'll just turn off halfway through. And this joke actually gets Batman to laugh. And it's not necessarily that the joke is like hilarious, but rather it's just a blatant observation of what their moment is that we're both insane, and you're the guy trying to inform me, you're trying to convince me that I can come across in this like impractical bridge, but I'm kind of ignoring the fact that you're trying to help me across and realizing that I just can't trust you. And it's kind of heartbreaking in a certain way, because it's basically like the most, I guess, vulnerable you've ever seen the Joker. But, yeah, so kind of gave my point on that. So, I guess to kind of answer or give you guys a question, are there certain comic books, or comics in general, that just can't be translated to film? And to some degree, I want to say that the answer to that is no, there might not be one, it's just a matter of how well they can work around it. But at the same time, I can also say that it might be more of a reason not to do the film, considering how much you have to pad out or how much you had to add to a film form, considering that a comic could technically be like 10 pages and could just be 10 glorious pages, but a film, like, the least amount of time people really care about is at least 30 minutes, but at that point you realize it's just a short thing, and sometimes you want a little bit more bang for your buck. So it's a neutral area to kind of ask, but again, I'd like to see some other opinions. So to move to the next thing, so yeah, Justice League, yeah, woo! So Justice League is definitely a confirmed thing that'll be coming out, and if you've seen the trailers, you know that Zack Snyder's working on this one too, and there's a notable change in this one in comparison to Dawn of Justice. And I guess you could say that Zack Snyder learned a big lesson about how he was doing films previously. That, yeah, maybe have some moments of levity. Maybe don't make everything all dark and grim and brooding. Maybe, you know, write a good film before thinking that sad or all the muted emotions that just result in nothing but serious, grim tone doesn't really add to a movie. You actually have to create good dialogue. You have to do stuff and blah blah blah. Either way, it seems like he definitely learned a lesson. Whether it worked out, I'm not sure as of yet, so we're waiting to see. But they definitely show that in the film that they're putting a lot of focus on Batman basically being Nick Fury going out getting his Avengers. Oh wait, I'm sorry, did I really just make a blatant comparison to Marvel? Oh yeah, because it really is a blatant comparison to Marvel, because he's doing literally that. But I am a little excited to kind of see, well, I shouldn't say excited, I will say that I have piqued interest. I have piqued interest in the Aquaman and the Flash, since these two characters have so much exuding personality. So for the most part, it really just focused on the fact that Batman is fighting these two people, and not even like what's happening in the film, like who the antagonist is or what's happening, just these two characters and what Batman and Wonder Woman are basically doing to get them. So the scene with Aquaman is where, or actually I'll start with the Flash instead. I'll do that first, blah blah blah. So the scene with Flash is like, you see that he kind of approaches him in what seems to be the Flash's hangout location or whatever, his headquarters, if you will. And he's there as Bruce Wayne, to which the kid is like, okay, who are you? I'm Bruce Wayne, and I came here for you. That doesn't explain anything. It's like, oh yeah, that really doesn't. And so eventually, Batman throws a batarang at him, and Flash dodges it in super speed, and he kind of realizes upon this occurring that he's Bruce Wayne. Cool! That's Batman! That's frickin' Batman! Can I keep this? And you just see him go all nerd boy on him, which is kind of funny. Essentially, it's like watching. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have so many Avengers references. Essentially, how Ant-Man looked at Captain America. It's just him going, "Yeah, he's awesome, woo!" But yeah, that's basically his entire moment. You kind of realize that he's gonna be the most notable comic relief of the film. And then you see it like there's the Aquaman portion where Batman is finding him, and he kind of goes into this like weird village area. Like almost seems like it's either like a fishing town where it's basically primarily worker class, and everyone's just kind of there. And like Bruce Wayne is like, "Hey, I'm looking for this dude," and they're all like, "Who the fuck is this guy? I don't know who the fuck this guy is. Hey, Joe, yeah, Bob. Who the fuck is this guy? I don't know who that fucking guy is. I don't like his jib. I don't like his jib. We don't like your jib. He doesn't like his jib. Hey, guys, they don't like his jib." And so he's just saying like, "Okay, look, I know you guys don't like me, but I'm looking for this guy. I'm looking for this pretty cool dude. You able to hear anything about him?" And eventually Aquaman just kind of comes out there and is like, "Hey, I don't like your jib." And he just kind of holds him to a wall and just like, "Okay, hold on. So, I know you're awesome, and there's this awesome team I'd like you to join. Shit's gonna go real. You should join. Yeah." And it's more like you see that there's a major intimidation factor that's coming from Aquaman. Like, not that it's all that surprising, but it's like, it's pretty much them kind of trying to remind people that, yeah, Aquaman is fucking intimidating. Because everyone keeps saying like, "Oh, he's just some guy who summons fish." Like, you guys know what Aquaman can do, right? I mean, okay, let me just like kind of spell that out for you. So first, you have a guy, right, who comes from the bottom of the ocean. Now, some of you guys kind of don't realize what that already implies just immediately. This is a person like not just breathing underwater, but a guy who can basically move like just generally underwater, no problem. Do you realize how hard it is for a person to move underwater? Like just in general, it is hard as hell to move underwater. Like it is actually physically hard for a person to do it. There's a reason why we don't work there. Well, under there. And he can kind of just do it naturally. And not to mention, he's living underwater where there's a significant amount of pressure. Which means, guess what? Aquaman is stronger than Batman. Like, significantly. Like, significantly stronger than he is. And for some reason, like, everyone just decides to ignore that aspect. It was like, well, why are you ignoring the fact that Aquaman is literally stronger than a set amount of people, and the fact that he can walk in both areas? Like, don't get me wrong, like, there's more to what he can do aside from just that, but like, just that alone should be enough to basically start getting you a little bit intimidated by the things he can do. But along with like he's super strength, he has along with like being able to breathe underwater, like the character has super strength, super endurability, he has control over sea life. Of course, you know, he can swim really well and breathe underwater, but from time to time, different iterations have shown him capable of actually being able to control water, where he had like a magical water hand, and then there was a portion of time where he's using his trident, which basically has magical abilities on it. Point being is, he can be pretty darn badass, and for some reason, everyone decides to focus on the 60s rendition or whatever, like the 1970s. Like, why is that everyone's go-to version of Aquaman? I mean, like, you're referring to an Aquaman that's literally more than 3 decades ago. And you're like, that's Aquaman! That's what Aquaman's like! He just breathes underwater and controls fishes! That's stupid! Like, you realize that Atlantis also has, like, a lot of unknown, like, underwater creatures. Like, there are actually a significant amount of monsters underwater that he can also control. But for some people, reason no one really ever takes into consideration. Or like, if you've seen like the Injustice movie, you see that his people are also super advanced underwater, and they literally take over the surface. So I mean, like, how is no one acknowledging the actual level of threat that this character possesses? Anywho, that's just some gripes I have about some people always having Aquaman, but nonetheless, it seems like with this movie, they're also committed to making something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more animated set, some color going on. Like, if you happen to see this, like the scene where they happen to go inside the Flash's base, you kind of see a lot of kind of idea what kind of ifs they're going through, and it is a pretty decked out room. And if you kind of look around the room, you kind of see some pretty funny things. Like, if you actually look towards, I think it's like the furthest or second to furthest most right monitor that seems to be in the background, you can see he's watching Rick and Morty. And in other portions, like, you might just see some kind of like analysis over his body, and then just a random skull, which out of all the things, like, that's the thing that just keeps sticking out in my memory, just because, like, it's this big random skull. Like, I don't know if it's just a screensaver, but I don't know why. It just put a lot of attention on me. But nonetheless, like, this little scene they have with these two characters interacting, like, the kind of set design that's gonna be going behind it, it seems like they're trying to make it a little bit more, I guess, animated in a way. By essentially, like, how you happen to like get people more focused on a certain scene is by using a decent control of light, color, and using negative space. Because if you don't know, like, the eye tends to be attracted to specific things. Eyes tend to be attracted to light, color, movements, distance, and also whatever is the odd thing out. So certain ways you can basically manipulate this would be like, say, if you have an entire wall of polka dots, and let's say all the polka dots are orange except for one, which is blue, your focus can be on the blue one. So in this case, when you happen to see the scene, you see that Zack Snyder, despite his bad film, Dawn of Justice, he happens to have a decent way of actually kind of getting you to focus on different things in the scene. So, like, he has a decent way to actually put a scene together, how to basically, he has good use of cinematography. And the reason why I kind of really like this one scene is just because as you kind of look and absorb the scene a little bit more and more, you kind of realize that while you have to the right scene, you have all the different distractions that kind of give you an insistence of how smart this kid is, or all the different gadgets. When you move towards the left, things become a little bit more dramatically simple. Like, there's less screens, and moves to books, and then eventually leads to this negative space that's a little bit less busy. And you see, which basically actually highlights where Batman's sitting, or Bruce is sitting. Which is actually pretty darn alluring, where basically it's just simple use of color to where you basically just separate the screen entirely. And then basically by using just the shadow of blah blah blah, the Flash, you basically get an implied sense of a single person and how he's absorbing the entire scene that he's in. And like, I know this doesn't necessarily mean the movie's gonna be good, and I know, like, a lot of people saying, like, that's a lot of artsy-tartsy crap that you're talking about, trying to make this movie seem like it's gonna be good. Like, I'm just saying I'm appreciating certain qualities to a film where a person is actually taking note to tiny details of how to get a person to focus on certain things. Because odds are, when you look at the trailer, the things you're probably gonna focus on, aside from Bruce and the Flashes, you're probably gonna focus on the screens, the lighting, and then how, I guess, like a unconventional base that he has. But, like, you're really gonna notice the colors, and like, none of it seems like it's distracting, I guess, in a way. I mean, I guess, like what I like to see, like, I like seeing, like, just tiny bits of details that are worked on enough to where they know how to attract your attention. And I think to some degree that does mean, like, maybe Zack Snyder's putting a little bit more effort into this film than the other ones. But again, we've also been let down before, so I guess don't hold your breath. But aside from that, I'm just really happy that they're putting a bit more focus on other characters, but what I'm hoping is that it's not going to be so distracted by doing this. There was also a brief moment where Cyborg was seen, I guess before he became a cyborg, and I have some fear of how he's going to be treated, considering that he wasn't really given that much attention in the trailer, considering that, like, this film seems like they're trying to introduce who these three new characters are, and put enough attention on them to basically give you a reason as to why you should care about them. So I'm hoping he gets a bit more screen time than just that. I mean, it seems almost a tad unfair that's like, hey look, Khal Drogo, you want to see him? Hey look, the Flash! Oh yeah, where's the Cyborg in the background? But hey, the Flash and Aquaman! But what about Cyborg? I mean, he's got a decent following, and we have no idea what kind of personality he's gonna have. I mean, right about now, I mean, we can at least kind of attribute something to the other two. Oh, look, he's funny. Oh, look, he's intimidating. Oh, look, there's just Cyborg. Hey, Cyborg, what kind of personality you got? Are you funny? You gonna give us a booyah? No? We don't get any of that. In fact, we don't even really get to see you as Cyborg. We just know you're there. Okay, thanks, trailer. Thanks. So, I'm hoping that he doesn't end up kind of get pushed out of the limelight just because they're gonna focus on other characters a bit more than they should. Because that's kind of what screwed him over in some other films, and they need to understand, like, since it's the Justice League, all the characters have to have some level of significance. And again, I'm sorry I have to keep comparing to Marvel, but like, you see how Marvel took the time to actually introduce you to each character, give them some level of significance. And because like some of these guys don't have their own movie, it makes it a little bit harder for us to really know who they are, and this is where we're introducing them. And this is probably the reason why you should have given them a movie first before just pushing out the Justice League. So I'm hoping that you guys put some effort into these characters so it doesn't feel like you're rushing out a character at the last moment that we're supposed to be emotionally connected to, but have no real intimate means of actual attachment to them because we had so little interaction with them and we can only base their entirety off of, like, I don't know, certain just quirks or something like that. I'm running out of breath. But, you know, stuff and things. Mwah. So I guess for this one, I'd like to actually ask, what is your prediction of the upcoming film? Do you think that the movie is going to be good, it's going to be bad, is it going to be something that critics hate but audiences like, or is it going to be panned by both? Do you think Zack Snyder was able to undo what he did, blah 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 blah? I will say at least that at Comic-Con, it seemed that Zack Snyder was able to get a lot of the people in the crowd to kind of swing his way, considering that it started off with them all booing him, and then it turned into, yeah, okay. So, I mean, he's been given a second chance, so we'll see what he can do with this. I hope it's something good. So, moving to other Justice League news, so Cartoon Network is now getting another Justice League show, Justice League Action. And, again, just because it's DC animated, I have a bit more faith in it. And if you've seen the trailer, it seems like that the characters are a bit more animated, have a bit more personality. It seems like the characters have something going on. I mean, even Superman has something going on. He's got a little smirk on his face when you see him in the poster, like, yeah, you want some of this? And I'll be like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. You're kind of boring and everything else. Maybe you might be the good one. But, it seems like this one is basically going to go for a route that's a little bit more open to characters. Like, thus far, since it seems like the three main characters presenting is Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, it seems like they might be building the entire Justice League from the ground up again with a different cast. So that means, as far as we know, like, from the different trailers, I've seen some characters involved, but since they're really pushing these three forward, it makes me a little bit curious as to who's going to be part of the main cast as a whole. Because like the original Justice League, or at least the previous Justice League, the characters that were involved was, of course, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, but you also had the Green Lantern, where they actually got Jon Stewart as that one. Not the Daily Show, the black guy. They also had Hawk Girl, and they also had Jean Valjean, aka the Martian Manhunter. And that was the previous Justice League, and quite frankly, like, even though the show's been off the air for a while, like, it's still very near and dear to our hearts. But this time around, it seems like they're working on these characters, and it seems like they're giving some of them a bit more personality, which I can't argue as something that I'd ever dislike for Wonder Woman, because for the most part, I have never been invested in her character, since for the most part, she's always been, oh, Hera, as I've probably said previously, in another podcast or so. But I've never been a big fan of her because she's always just been so straightforward. She seemed kind of just muted and excluded to just one kind of personality trait. And that made me dislike her because just about in anything I've seen Wonder Woman in, she's always been just kind of meh. I mean, at least like in Dawn of Justice, it seems like they're giving her a bit of a personality, which is something, which in all honesty, I can't really argue like for them going a different direction because I'll appreciate that. But, like I say, to some degree, I kind of like this new design of her, although I still question why she has a skirt, but I guess it's because, technically in Roman times, they didn't have pants. So, there is a give and take on that, but we'll see how well she does, and how this new series is. We also see that Batman is doing a lot of interesting things in this series, like, just straight off the bat, they're like, hey, guess what? He puts on the ring! Batman puts on the ring! So we know that Green Lantern's definitely going to be in here, but I'm not sure if he's going to be of the main cast or not, since, again, the main advertising is the previous three I mentioned. But nonetheless, like, there's going to be a lot of different things they're going to be doing with this series, and they were even bringing back some other characters that weren't seen previously, like, they're bringing back, I believe his name is Firestorm or something of the sort, and also Plastic Man is actually getting a significant involvement in this story, which he hasn't had involvement in, like, anything DC in a while now, so I'm interested to see how they're going to work with this new cast. I'm also happy to see that Wonder Woman is actually using a freaking sword. Because for some reason they always have a major aversion to her using a sword in the previous animated series. They always just make sure she used the whip, but it's like, of all things, it seems like she'd be using a sword more often. But nonetheless, like, I'm kind of excited to see what Cartoon is going to do with this, especially since the only other DC thing they have going on is Teen Titans Go, which is... I mean, I don't want to say I'm going to join the bandwagon of how everyone should hate Teen Titans Go, because, like, it's not the worst thing by any degree, but it's also has so many freaking faults, to the point that it's basically, like, it had the possibility of being something original, but then you can see how they got just visibly lazy, and, like, I've definitely expressed my point on this on previous podcasts about my opinions on it, but, I mean, clearly, it seems like it's filling in the role of the new Johnny Test, like that one show they can just kind of show whenever, and it almost feels obnoxious. So I'm hoping that this new show will basically still have kind of like the animated fun, the entire lively, jovial, and I guess carefree attitude that even the previous Teen Titans had, but still has the capacity to be serious, or at least be able to handle a certain story. And I'm actually happy they're really opening the cast up. Like, right off the bat, you even see that Blue Beetle's even gonna be in here too. And, like, I'm hoping what they do with this, that they kind of do something of what, like, Batman Brave and the Bold did, where it's like they have a lot of other characters who become regulars on the show. Might not necessarily be in every single episode, but, like, enough to where you see that they can go in multiple different directions with an episode. Because it means that you have a lot of characters you can become invested in, and I like shows that don't remain static. So, overall, I'm kind of having some positive feelings about this. Aside from that, I don't really have anything else to really say on it, simply because there isn't really anything else to really add to it aside from just comparing it to two other DC shows, and clearly this is trying to be its own thing, or at least it's trying to stand out in a different way. Although I will say one thing, it has reminded me a little bit of some of the DC comics that have been coming out, the ones that are a little bit more animated, and they tend to be, I don't know, I think I don't want to keep saying animated, but everything about it always seems to basically have some kind of vigor to it. So it seems like it should be good, and I guess the question for this would be is, what should be expected of the DC animation resurgence? Should we hope to see that its new animated resurgence of everything DC will basically end up saving a lot of people, or basically adding a new belief to what DC can do, since more often than not it's the animated side that tends to be well praised while the live action is always heavily criticized. And I hope that maybe this animated resurgence kind of brings a new life to DC, because they are hurting so bad. I mean, because you can just see, like, with all this creativity that's coming from the animated side, there's so much there, but for live action, it's almost just a paint by the numbers, and it's such a major catch up to whatever Marvel's doing. And, like, I don't want to have to keep comparing to Marvel, but it's so palpable the, like, jealousy they have for them. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it on that subject. So I guess I'll move to the last subject of the blah 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 podcast. We have Injustice 2. Every battle defines you. So, if you know anything about NetherRealm Studios, you know that they are the creators of Mortal Kombat, and they were the ones who made the first Injustice, which was a pretty smash hit. A lot of people were big fans of it, and they liked some of the characters. But it's like, if you follow video games at all, the one thing I'd say the complaint that people had for Injustice is that it became obvious that it was basically the warm-up to the newest Mortal Kombat. Like, it was just basically the warm-up to Mortal Kombat X. So the new Injustice seems like they're adding new mechanics to this one. In the trailer, you happen to see a lot of the characters, like, as they're fighting, it seems like they're, like, evolving, like, getting armor. And, like, for a moment, I just kind of had to, like, stop and go, like, what the fuck? Why is Batman growing flesh? Like, you know what? Never mind. It's Batman. He just does this. And then, like, Flash does it. And it's like, wait, Flash is now, like, growing flesh? Okay. That's interesting. So it seems like whatever the mechanic is, it seems that your characters gain armor throughout the game. And they're also opening a larger cast, opening the entire characters to a larger cast. Most notably, the three ones I think people have most of their focus on is the Blue Beetle, oh god, Gorilla Grodd, and Supergirl. So this seems like it could be interesting for some characters, and I'm happy that Blue Beetle is getting more time in the limelight, and I hope that eventually he gets moving, because it seems like he's the most obvious next step for DC to go for when it comes to characters, provided they can survive this current onslaught. But it's like, it's nice to see more characters put in there, and since I like the previous Injustice, I'd like to see these new mechanics and you're getting more characters. I'd like to see what they can do with them, and since they have a larger cast than the last time, I'm also kind of anticipating what's going to be coming from the DLC characters from the other one. Because some of the most notable DLC characters that were in the last Injustice were Batgirl, Martian Manhunter, Scorpion, Lobo. So like they had a lot of interesting characters they threw in there, and some of them that actually got a decent amount of attention. Of course, I hope that they also do some decent balancing for this one. Of course, there are going to be updates, but like after the first one, you saw that there were a lot of characters who were a little tad unbalanced for a while. Like you had Superman, who basically was just scoop, 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 laser ability that was going on. You had Deathstroke, who was just always on the other side of the map, just shoot, 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 nothing else. And so I'm just hoping that they have a decent balancing for these characters, so that way it feels as if like everyone is a viable option. Because there's nothing more unfun to a game than realizing that a character you like is one of the weaker or like a D-class character. Because like I kind of want them to kind of balance it like how they did in the most recent Smash Bros. Despite some of the characters who were a tad unfair, but like even if there was like technically the worst character, he still felt viable as a playing character. Whereas in the other Injustice, some people just felt like, why even use him? Like, why are you even playing me? Go. I know I'm the last pick. You don't have to pick me. Like, no, 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 it's fine. Like, I wanted to pick you. No, you don't. You're just doing it because you feel bad for me. And yeah, you just start figuring, like, do you want a juice box? Is that what I had to do? Do I have to get you a juice box? But, yeah. Now, I will say one thing I'm not particularly big on is NetherRealm Studios hasn't always been the greatest at actually modeling some female characters' faces. Like, in the last one, Raven's face, it's like, oh my god. Like, everyone was like, oh yeah, Raven, like from Teen Titans. That's gonna be fun. Raven, and oh my god, your face! What did they do? They sculpted it from jagged rocks. Oh god, your face. And in this one, like, one of the underwhelming faces seems to be, like, Supergirl's. Like, she just seems so... I don't know, like, it's like she's just there. Like, her face is just, like, normal, putty human face. Like, I like, it's not really a well, it is a criticism, and, like, I know it's probably not the most intelligible criticism, but it's just, she seems so underwhelming in the face, I guess. Like, you have some characters who just from, like, just by looking at their face, you can already get, like, an entire emphasis on who they are, and they can just, like, sell you on that point alone. But, like, this one is just meh. I don't know. Oh, yeah, and I also forgot there's also, I'm not entirely sure who the character's name is. I know he's a red ring user from the Lantern Corps, but I for the life of me cannot remember his name. And now you're probably just gonna hear me typing away in the background, like, oh, look at him, he's looking up the character's name, and I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. I'm sorry. Atrocitus. That is his name. There we go, everybody. I got his name, Atrocitus. But yeah, the fact that we're opening the cast some more, some ring characters, because the last one you had Sinestro, and he had some pretty fun play with his yellow ring, and I feel like it was always unfair for the Lantern Corps to always kind of be limited to just like, hey, look, there's a green and then there's yellow. Yeah, what about all the other colors? There's a rainbow. What one? No, this is green and yellow, and they always focus on those two against one another, despite you having like, let's see, there's the red, orange, there's blue, there's purple, there's the pink, there's the white and black one, and like, man, think about the wars those two have. Like, you have 7 other colors to work with, and you always just stuck on yellow and green for some reason. So it's nice to see that they're actually open up to some other members of the Green Corps, Lantern Corps. Man, that took more effort than it should have. Also, like, I've seen some gameplay of it, and at the moment it seems like Gorilla Grodd is going to need a little bit of tweaking, since he seems to be some of the weaker characters who has been having some trouble making some other players. So I'm hoping that he basically gets some more fixes. I mean, again, like, they just showed out, like, I think it was either an OBA beta or maybe even just an alpha, actually, just to give you an idea of who they were. I'm also a little bit curious to see like what exactly Batman's entire PALP ability is, because it seems like it's him using the Green Lantern Corps or something of the sort. Because like he's been shown with a green, I guess, particle effect, a green luminescence, you could say. And it seems like a lot of people are basically saying like, yeah, Batman should probably get a Green Lantern ring. You should probably get one. Do it. Which would be interesting. But aside from that, I guess I can't really say there's really too much to talk about for the game, because at the moment, there isn't too much of a buzz around it, and unless you play the initial Injustice, that's pretty much it that you can refer to it by. If anyone is excited, I hope that this is something that you'll be looking forward to. And there's another game from NetherRealm Studios, and they've been always, I shouldn't say always, but they've been giving out some steady, decent hits. So I guess, what is your most anticipated character for the upcoming game? Who are you most excited for, or who do you expect is going to be really good? For me, I'm going to go ahead and just say Blue Beetle initially. But as a sleeper character, I'm expecting for like someone from the DC. I expect possibly Deadman from DC, because he's a character from the Justice League Dark series that where essentially they deal with the supernatural side of things, and I kind of like Deadman. I'd like to see him to get a little bit more acknowledgement. So aside from that, yeah, thanks for listening, and or watching, depending on how this thing gets out. Blah 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 blah. And we'll see where we're gonna be next time. Maybe in the next video. Maybe do some stuff. Blah blah blah. Bye. Bye bye. Also gets I guess a juice box. I don't even know why.